Today, we're going to break down a deal that isn't just a headline. It's pretty much a seismic shift for all of Hollywood. We're talking about a deal so big it could fundamentally change not just how movies get made, but what it even means to go to the movies in the first place.
You know something massive has just happened when industry analysts start dropping lines like this. That quote from Sean Robbins over at Fandango just perfectly captures the shockwave that ripped through Hollywood after one single blockbuster announcement. And here it is, the deal itself. Netflix, the streaming giant that totally rewrote the rules for TV, is now acquiring Warner Bros. Discovery. Yes, that Warner Bros., the legendary studio behind everything from Casablanca to The Dark Knight to Barbie. Netflix actually won a bidding war against other giants like Paramount and Comcast, and, well, the moment the news broke, the entire industry just erupted.
So what does this new world order actually look like? This is not just one company buying another. No, this is a fundamental clash between Hollywood's old guard, the one built on big box office gambles and star power, and this new era of entertainment that's driven by algorithms and subscriber data. This really sets the stage for a major conflict over the very future of film.
So let's break it down. What's in the deal? Netflix gets the iconic film studio, its incredible library, and all its streaming assets. But the most telling part of this whole story isn't what was bought, it's the immediate reaction. For movie theater owners, everyone from the smallest indie cinema to the biggest multiplex, the response wasn't curiosity, it was pure panic.
And believe me, panic is not an overstatement here. For the whole cinema business, this deal feels less like a challenge and more like an existential threat. So why are they sounding the alarm so loudly? Well, it all comes down to control.
That is some incredibly powerful language. In an open letter to the U.S. Congress, people in the industry use this exact phrase, a noose around the theatrical marketplace. It just perfectly illustrates the fear that one company, a company built from the ground up on a streaming-first model, could soon hold life-or-death power over the entire cinema ecosystem.
And they've put a number to that fear. The trade group Cinema United estimates this deal puts a whopping 25% of the annual domestic box office at risk. That's the share that Warner Bros. Films traditionally bring in. Losing that kind of revenue wouldn't just hurt. For smaller chains and independent theaters, it could be a fatal blow.
Okay, the absolute crucial point in this entire conflict boils down to this one term, the theatrical window. For decades, this has been the bedrock of the movie business. It's that exclusive period that gets you to leave your house, buy a ticket, and grab a giant bucket of popcorn. Theaters completely depend on it.
But here's the thing, that window has already been shrinking fast. Before 2020, it was a solid 70 to 90 days. After the pandemic, it dropped to more like 30-45 days. But the Netflix model? It's practically zero. Their entire philosophy is about instant gratification for subscribers at home, which is the polar opposite of the business model that keeps theaters alive. So the core fears are pretty clear. Fewer movies in theaters, windows that just disappear entirely, and small businesses collapsing. This is exactly why they're now calling for government regulators to step in and really scrutinize this deal.
But hey, that's only one side of the story. So, how is Netflix responding to all this industry-wide alarm? Let's take a look at their defense and their very, very different vision for the future of movies.
And here it is, the core of Netflix's argument, straight from co-CEO Ted Sarandos. They frame this entire strategy not as anti-theater, but as pro-consumer. In their view, making you wait months to see a movie at home is just a bad experience. Their priority isn't the box office, it's the subscriber who's paying that monthly fee.
This really gets to the heart of the conflict. Traditional studios like Warner Bros. Have always prioritized theatrical runs to maximize their box office. Netflix, on the other hand, prioritizes getting content directly to its members to drive subscriber growth. These are two totally different playbooks. But the clash goes even deeper. It's also about creative decisions. Warner Bros. Is built on filmmaker relationships and big, gutsy gambles. Netflix is famously driven by data on what you watch. So what happens when those two cultures collide?
Now, Netflix is trying to calm the waters a bit. They've pledged to honor all existing Warner Bros. Theatrical contracts until 2029. They say they'll release the films that are already planned and meet with theater owners. They even argue they already released dozens of films in theaters. But, and this is a big but, a Netflix theatrical release is often a really limited 1 or 2 week run in just a few cities, mostly to qualify for awards. It's not the wide, heavily marketed release that theaters actually rely on to survive.
To really get the full impact here, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This massive deal isn't just happening out of nowhere. It's landing right in the middle of an industry that is already incredibly fragile and in a huge state of flux, which just makes the stakes that much higher.
Yeah, the theatrical business has been weathering a perfect storm of challenges for years now. This deal is just the latest, and maybe the largest wave to hit an already struggling industry. Just think about the headwinds they're already facing. Box office numbers? Still not back to pre-pandemic levels. The pandemic shutdowns created these huge content gaps we're still feeling. The recent labor strikes delayed a massive slate of films. And this isn't even the first major merger to shrink the number of movies being made.
Which brings us to this trend. Remember back in 2019 when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, theater owners saw exactly what they were afraid of. The combined studio ended up producing fewer films overall than the two did separately. So when they see this new deal, they aren't just guessing. They're looking at a recent and pretty painful precedent.
All of this brings us to the most critical part of the story, the future. Because this deal has raised a bunch of massive, unanswered questions that are going to define the next era of Hollywood.
Go ahead and circle this date on your calendar. 2029. That's the year Netflix's promise to honor existing contracts runs out. It's kind of the cliff's edge between a known present and a completely unknown future. And what happens the day after that obligation ends? Well, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it?
So, the first big question is whether any of this will even happen as planned. With theater groups and producers calling on federal, state, and even international bodies to investigate, will regulators actually step in? Could they block the deal, or maybe force Netflix to make certain guarantees to protect theaters?
And this is the ultimate fear for cinema owners. After 2029, will Netflix decide that huge franchises like Batman or Harry Potter are actually more valuable as subscriber-exclusive events on their platform than as theatrical releases? Will the traditional big-screen blockbuster from Warner Bros. Just cease to exist?
And finally, this brings it all back to you, to us. We've talked about business models and corporate strategy, but the real question here is about culture. Is this a step towards a future where the only place to see a new, major movie is on your couch? Could this truly be the beginning of the end for movie night out?
You know, this quote from a theater operator really says it all. After all the analysis and all the promises, the entire industry is basically in a state of suspended animation. They have to take Netflix at its word while fearing a future where that word just isn't enough. For now, all anyone can really do is wait and see what happens when the credits roll on this new world order.